Welcome to Biography with Plutarch, where we delve into the lives of extraordinary individuals, exploring the intricacies of their character, the influences that shaped them, and the choices that defined their destinies. Today, we embark on a fascinating journey through the life of Geronimo, the legendary Apache leader whose name has become synonymous with courage, resilience, and the unyielding spirit of resistance. Born around 1829 in what is now Arizona, Geronimo's early life was marked by the harsh realities of living on the borderlands of the American frontier. His birthplace, in the vicinity of the Gila River, was a region where the traditional ways of the Apache people were increasingly under threat from Mexican and American encroachment. The landscape itself was a testament to the unforgiving nature of the desert environment. Vast expanses of arid land stretched as far as the eye could see, punctuated by rocky outcroppings and the occasional oasis. It was here that Geronimo's family and community had lived for generations, their lives intricately tied to the rhythms of the natural world. Geronimo's given name at birth was Goyala, which translates to one who yawns, a moniker that would later be replaced by the name that has become etched in history. As a child, Geronimo was surrounded by the rich cultural heritage of his people. He was raised in a Bedonkohe Apache family, one of the several bands that made up the broader Apache nation. His father, Taklishim, and mother, Gray Deer, were both respected members of their community, known for their wisdom, bravery, and spiritual insight. The early years of Geronimo's life were spent learning the traditional ways of his ancestors, hunting, tracking, and the art of warfare, skills that would serve him well in the tumultuous years to come. The historical context of Geronimo's childhood was one of escalating tension between the Apache people and the external forces seeking to displace them. The Mexican government had long been at odds with the Apache, and the arrival of American settlers and soldiers only added to the conflict. It was during this period that Geronimo's family and community faced numerous challenges, including raids, massacres, and forced relocation. These experiences would profoundly shape Geronimo's worldview, instilling in him a deep-seated distrust of outsiders and a fierce determination to protect his people and their way of life. One of the most significant influences on Geronimo's early life was his relationship with his mother, Gray Deer. She was known for her strong character and spiritual power, often serving as a mediator and healer within their community. From her, Geronimo learned the importance of respecting tradition, honoring the spirits, and maintaining the delicate balance between the physical and spiritual worlds. The stories of his mother's wisdom and courage would stay with Geronimo throughout his life, guiding him in times of turmoil and uncertainty. As a young boy, Geronimo would often accompany his mother on her journeys to the nearby mountains, where she would collect medicinal herbs and pray to the spirits. These experiences instilled in him a deep appreciation for the natural world and the interconnectedness of all living things. He learned about the importance of living in harmony with nature, taking only what was needed, and respecting the delicate balance of the ecosystem. These lessons would later inform his leadership style as he sought to protect his people's land and way of life from the encroaching forces of modernization. As Geronimo grew older, he began to take on more responsibilities within his community, learning from the elder men the art of warfare and the strategies of leadership. His natural aptitude for these roles, combined with his fierce loyalty to his people, marked him as a future leader among the Apache. He was trained in the traditional ways of Apache warfare, including the use of stealth, cunning, and ambush tactics. These skills would serve him well in the years to come as he faced off against Mexican and American forces in a series of bloody conflicts. However, it was not until he faced a personal tragedy that Geronimo's path towards becoming one of the most legendary figures in American history began to take shape. The loss of his family at the hands of Mexican soldiers would be the catalyst for his transformation into a warrior and leader, driven by a quest for justice and vengeance that would define his public actions and cement his place in the annals of history. The memory of that fateful day would stay with Geronimo forever, etched into his mind like a scar. He was just a young man at the time, barely out of his teenage years. His family had been camped near the Mexican border, seeking to avoid the conflict that had been escalating in the region. But despite their efforts to remain neutral, they were attacked by a group of Mexican soldiers who slaughtered Geronimo's mother, father, and younger brother. The trauma of that event would shape Geronimo's worldview, fueling his anger and resentment towards the external forces that had destroyed his family. The early years of Geronimo's life were thus a complex interplay of traditional Apache culture, familial influence, and the harsh realities of living at a time of conflict and upheaval. These formative experiences laid the groundwork for the man he would become, a symbol of resistance against overwhelming odds, a leader who embodied the spirit of his people, and a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit in the face of adversity. As the years passed, Geronimo's reputation as a skilled warrior and leader continued to grow, earning him the respect and admiration of his people. The desert landscape, with its unforgiving sun, rocky outcroppings, and vast expanses of sandy dunes, became his domain, and he knew it intimately. He could navigate its treacherous terrain with ease, using his knowledge of hidden water sources, secret caves, and ancient trails to evade his enemies and launch surprise attacks. In 1876, he emerged as one of the key figures in the Apache resistance against Mexican and American forces, using his cunning and strategic brilliance to launch a series of successful raids against his enemies. One notable example of his strategic genius was the raid on the Mexican town of Llanos, which took place on January 21, 1877. Geronimo and his band of warriors swept into the town under the cover of darkness, catching the Mexican soldiers off guard and killing several of them before making their escape. The sound of gunfire echoed through the streets, and the smell of smoke and blood filled the air as the Apaches vanished into the night, leaving behind a trail of destruction and chaos. This daring raid cemented Geronimo's status as a major thorn in the side of the Mexican and American authorities, who were determined to capture or kill him. However, Geronimo remained elusive, always staying one step ahead of his pursuers. He was a master of disguise, able to blend into the desert landscape like a ghost. He would often travel at night, using the stars to guide him, and hide in secret caves during the day, where he could rest and plan his next move. As he later reflected, "I was never afraid of the Americans or the Mexicans, for I knew that I was fighting for my people and my land." His conviction and determination inspired his followers, who were willing to risk everything to fight alongside him. In 1881, Geronimo's leadership skills were put to the test when he was forced to navigate a complex web of alliances and rivalries between different Apache bands. The Chiricahua and the Warm Springs Apaches had been at odds for years, their differences fueled by competing interests and ancient grievances. Geronimo played a key role in mediating the dispute, using his charisma and diplomatic skills to broker a peace agreement that would ultimately prove crucial to the survival of both groups. He spent hours in council with the leaders of both bands, listening to their concerns and negotiating a settlement that would satisfy both parties. This diplomatic effort demonstrated Geronimo's ability to think strategically and prioritize the needs of his people, even in the face of great adversity. Geronimo's relationships with his contemporaries were often complex and multifaceted. He was particularly close to a fellow Apache leader who shared his commitment to resistance against Mexican and American forces. Together, they launched a series of raids against their enemies, using their combined knowledge of the terrain and their military prowess to devastating effect. They would often meet in secret, planning their attacks and sharing intelligence on their enemies. However, Geronimo also had his differences with other Apache leaders, including Loco, who disagreed with his tactics and ultimately defected to the American side. This betrayal was a bitter blow to Geronimo, who had once considered Loco a friend and ally. One of the most significant events in Geronimo's life took place on September 4, 1886, when he surrendered to American forces at Skeleton Canyon, Arizona. The decision was motivated by a combination of factors, including the exhaustion of his people, the loss of key allies, and the relentless pressure exerted by the American military. As Geronimo later explained, "I saw that our people were dying, and I knew that we could not win the war. So, I decided to surrender in order to save the lives of my people." The weight of his responsibility as a leader had become too much to bear, and he knew that continuing to fight would only lead to more suffering and bloodshed. The surrender was a poignant moment, filled with emotion and symbolism. Geronimo, once the embodiment of Apache resistance, stood tall and proud, his eyes fixed on the American officers who had come to take him into custody. He was flanked by his loyal followers, who looked on with a mix of sadness and resignation. The desert landscape, once a source of strength and inspiration, now seemed barren and unforgiving, a reminder of the harsh realities that had led to this moment. As Geronimo handed over his rifle, a symbol of his surrender, he knew that he was not only giving up his freedom, but also his way of life. Despite his surrender, Geronimo's legacy as a leader and a symbol of resistance continued to inspire his people. He spent the remainder of his life in captivity, first at Fort Pickens, Florida, and later at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where he died on February 17, 1909. However, even in death, Geronimo remained a powerful symbol of Apache pride and resilience, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit in the face of adversity. His story was passed down through generations, a reminder of the struggles and sacrifices made by his people in their fight for survival and self-determination. As one of his contemporaries observed, Geronimo was a great leader who fought for his people and his land with all his heart. His memory will live on forever as an inspiration to us all. As the years passed, Geronimo's life in captivity became a complex tapestry of adaptation and resilience, woven from the threads of hardship, determination, and an unwavering spirit. Despite being imprisoned, he continued to inspire his people, who saw him as a beacon of hope and a symbol of resistance against the encroaching forces of colonialism. The American public, too, was fascinated by Geronimo's unyielding resolve, which seemed to embody the very essence of the Wild West. In 1904, he even participated in the World's Fair in St. Louis, Missouri, where he was exhibited as a living specimen of a Native American warrior, a role that both thrilled and appalled him. As he walked through the fairgrounds, surrounded by the cacophony of sounds and the kaleidoscope of colors, Geronimo must have felt like a relic from another era, a reminder of a time when the American West was still a vast, untamed expanse. The experience, though often seen as dehumanizing, allowed him to share his story and culture with a wider audience, sparking a new wave of interest in Apache history and traditions. He spoke about the ancient ways of his people, about the intricacies of their social structures, and about the deep connection they had with the land. As he shared his wisdom, Geronimo's eyes seemed to gleam with a fire that had been burning within him for decades, a flame that had fueled his resistance against the Mexican and American armies. In the early 1900s, Geronimo began to work on his autobiography, which would eventually be published in 1906. The book, written with the help of S.M. Barrett, an Oklahoma superintendent of education, provided a unique glimpse into Geronimo's life, from his childhood in the Arizona Territory to his time as a prisoner of war. Through this narrative, Geronimo aimed to set the record straight about his people and their struggles, challenging the dominant narratives that had long misrepresented Apache history. He wrote about the brutal treatment meted out to his people by the Mexican and American authorities, about the forced relocations, the massacres, and the broken promises. As he penned these words, Geronimo's heart must have swelled with a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a deep sense of loss. As Geronimo's health began to decline, he became increasingly concerned with the welfare of his people and the preservation of their culture. He converted to Christianity in 1903, which some saw as a strategic move to improve his treatment and gain more freedom. However, this decision also reflected his genuine interest in exploring different spiritual traditions and finding common ground between Apache and Christian beliefs. Geronimo's conversion was not a rejection of his native spirituality, but rather an attempt to understand the world through multiple lenses. He saw parallels between the Apache concept of the power and the Christian notion of God, and he began to incorporate elements of both into his daily life. Geronimo's later years were marked by a series of recognitions and honors, including being allowed to visit his homeland in Arizona and meeting with President Theodore Roosevelt in 1905. Though these events brought some measure of closure and respect, they also underscored the complexities of Geronimo's life as a symbol of both resistance and assimilation. As he walked through the streets of Washington, D.C., surrounded by the trappings of power and privilege, Geronimo must have felt a sense of disorientation, a feeling that he was caught between two worlds. He was no longer the fierce warrior who had once terrorized the Mexican and American armies, but a revered elder statesman who had earned the respect of his enemies. On February 17, 1909, Geronimo passed away at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, due to complications from pneumonia. His death marked the end of an era, not only for the Apache people, but also for the American West, which had been forever changed by his presence. As he reflected on his life in his autobiography, Geronimo said, "I was born for war, but now I am old and can no longer fight." These words capture the essence of a man who had dedicated his life to protecting his people and their way of life, even as the world around him underwent profound transformations. As the news of his death spread, it was met with a mix of emotions, sadness, nostalgia, and a deep sense of respect. Today, Geronimo is remembered as a powerful symbol of Native American resistance and resilience. His legacy extends far beyond his own story, inspiring generations of indigenous activists, artists, and leaders. The complexities of his life, marked by both fierce warrior spirit and strategic adaptability, serve as a reminder of the rich and multifaceted nature of human experience. Geronimo's story challenges us to confront the darker aspects of our collective past, while also celebrating the strength and dignity of Native American cultures. His story has been etched into the national consciousness, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, which can transform even the most challenging circumstances into opportunities for growth, resistance, and transformation. Geronimo's legacy serves as a bridge between two worlds, the world of his ancestors and the world of our contemporary reality. It reminds us that history is not just a series of events, but a complex web of relationships, experiences, and emotions. In the end, Geronimo's life stands as a testament to the human capacity for resilience, adaptability, and transformation. His story invites us to walk in his moccasins, to see the world through his eyes, and to understand the complexities of his experience. That's all for today's Biography with Plutarch. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, remember that understanding the lives of remarkable individuals helps us better understand ourselves.